90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today, our guest is Sandra Estok, and she is an expert on cyber security and also the author of the book, Happily Ever Cyber. She's going to provide ideas for lawyers on how they can avoid hackers and bolster their cyber security. So this is a very important show for all of us. Sandra, why are hackers and cyber monsters targeting law firms?
Hi, Ken. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And cyber monsters, as I call them, target law firms because law firms manage a number of private information, customer information that usually it's very attractive. If I get to hack my lawyer, I get to maybe their clients. And that's very common, not necessarily directly the law firm, but the clients of the law firm.
So it's a very convenient way to get to bigger fish.
Yes, one way. And to different industries, if you're a lawyer with real estate or if you're a lawyer that's mergers and acquisitions, there is a lot of money involved in transactions. So therefore, cybercrime is something that is it's the most illegal business that exists now.
And there may be access to personal information, confidential information.
Yes.
Social security numbers, credit cards, estate information, Absolutely. Bank accounts, corporate deals, insider information, who knows what else.
Yes. And besides that, there is a trust that you have in your attorney. We place that into that person. And if we get a communication from the attorney asking for a paper, we may give it to them easily. So one of the reasons why cyber criminals impersonate also law firms, they pretend to be you.
And sometimes they pretend to be looking for lawyers for business deals and asking for you to
Absolutely.
act to transmit money or do work on a deal. And it's just a way of you or your client sending money. And it could be a victim that way. So what do you recommend that a law firm does after there's been some type of hack?
Well, if there is already there are measures that are preventive and there are measures that are reactive. If you already have been hacked and you have to go through the process, the first is evidence. So you have to collect all the evidence that you have, that you can't do forensics. And because of the nature of your information, you will need either a legal assistance or you'll need a cybersecurity team that helps you to collect that information. And brand reputation is one of the biggest concerns for legal firms because the trust is lost once you get breached.
And you may want to hire a PR consultant. You may have to contact the authorities. You may have to file some type of insurance claim, and you might want to make sure you have insurance.
Absolutely.
For this type of occurrence.
Yes, definitely, Kenny, because again, it's your reputation on the line and it's the client's information, and it depends on the country you operate. There are privacy laws that also will apply to you if that information gets in the wrong hands. So,
and it's certainly going to hurt your brand too. So
Absolutely.
How can you protect your law firm from ransomware?
Ransomware is one of those things that happens every 14 seconds. There's a ransomware attack where if you open an email or click in a website that happens to have that type of malware, the malicious software, it locks your computer. And the best way that I have found to protect from ransomware are two things. Number one is education with your employees and making sure that they know there's no rush in answering an email or clicking and taking their time. And there is something that I use always is breathing 2-3 times before clicking or opening anything.
So do you have to be very cautious about opening attachments?
Yes.
And
definitely.
should you be equally cautious about opening the email itself if it looks suspicious?
The email itself is not going to infect you. It's opening the link or opening the attachments. But I will say, validate that nowadays there is software and there are tools available online where you can check if that link is actually safe to click. Google, as an example, Google Transparency. You just go to that and just copy paste that link and to validate that if the link is malicious or not.
And if it looks a little suspicious, if the website, if the spelling, if the colors, if the graphics look a little off, or if it's someone you don't recognize.
Mm-hmm.
And you could try to contact them in some other way to verify who they are before you open their email or file.
Excellent, Kenny. You got this. That's amazing. Yes. That, especially if there is a transaction, a monetary transaction that you're waiting for, that's really, really important to validate.
And as you said, we should not automatically open things. Mm-hmm. We should not rush to open things. So a minute of delay is going to be better than an ounce of prevention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ransomware is one of those news that you don't want to get any day. And the other thing that's more the reactive side of ransomware. But I think preventive, like having a backup, like if you become a victim of ransomware and now all your information is locked and you cannot even operate, you are more likely to pay for the ransom, which is not legal to pay. But, from a business perspective, it's harder. It's a decision. So if you have a good backup, if you have backups of the most important information offline and online, that don't rely on just one system.
Should we think twice before creating a network or networking all our computers? Or is there a way to build an iron wall so that if someone's infiltrated, it's just one computer rather than the entire network?
There are ways, but obviously, there are pros and cons for everything. So if you have just an isolated computer, sharing information might be more difficult than if you are in a network and you can have more common file transfers across all your computers. I think the key will be whatever is the best strategy for you as a firm, as a law firm, and making sure that you back up your information. Even if it's just one computer or 10 computers, you need to have copy of what is most important to you.
Now, is one technique that cyber criminals use to somehow learn your password, get you to enter your password and then somehow record it so they now know it?
There are different ways how cyber monsters or cyber criminals know or can get to your password. One is we use very simple guess passwords. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the word password are two of the most common passwords that are used and they are still in use today. And they can be cracked so easily.
So what are some better ways to have a tougher password?
So one way to have a password that I love, Ken, is create a phrase that means something to you. Like, have a wonderful day for my kids, or I love my kids very much, or something really long, meaningful. And every time you type it, makes you happy. And at the same time, a longer phrase is not easy for hackers to find in a dictionary or.
And is it helpful to have different, marks in it, or capitals or dots or numbers as well?
Yeah, so you can replace letters with numbers or letters with characters, but still you have the same long phrase. 25 characters will be good, but something you can remember. And the other thing I would suggest very much is having a password manager. Is the best that can help your firm be protected. You can't rely on, remembering all your passwords all the time. Just remember one big long password.
And the password manager should be on paper or somewhere on a computer.
The password manager it's an app or a program that is available. I pay, gladly for that service. But there are many things in the market. You can roll that out for all your employees in your law firm. And all the passwords are in just one location, and it's protected, it's encrypted.
And what about how is remote work, especially during COVID, impacting cyber safety for law firms?
Very much, because they have to now take papers that used to stay only on your legal office. Now people have to take them home, and as the pandemic, make everyone forcibly work from home. So one of the biggest challenges is for your clients and your confidential information. How do you transfer that safely? So one of the ways is having different places where you can encrypt your data, especially data that goes back and forth between different members of your firm.
I just want to remind our listeners that you're listening to Law You Should Know. We're talking about cybersecurity for law firms and others. And our guest is Sandra Estok, and she's also the author of a book, Happily Ever Cyber. Just tell us about your book, Sandra. What topics you cover?
Yeah, so the book is a different book. It's about stories, and starts with my own story when a cyber monster from China, a smuggler, stole my identity and was smuggling women into the U.S. using my identity. So the book goes through all those stories and also explains cybersecurity in a different way, very simple, very straightforward language, no technical words. And there are 6 stories from other leaders in the industry that have been either hacked or potentially scam.
And that may have led you and them to become cybersecurity experts.
Yes. So
how can someone get a hold of your book? Would you have portions of it available on your website?
Yes, they can go to happilyevercyber.com and they can get the book there, and also checklists and other bonuses that I included with the book, so they can know how to protect their social media accounts, how to protect if they are a victim of identity theft, or they want to protect their kids, or they want to protect their identity of someone that passed. I mean, there are so many things that happen with identity theft.
And we're going to cover some of those topics in the second portion of the program. And the book is Happily Ever Cyber, CYBER. If a company is using third-party vendors who may be hooked to your computers, maybe an accountant, maybe some other vendor, is that a threat to your security?
Absolutely. Some of the bigger hacks that has happened through third parties, like, the big one that happened to Target through the HVAC company. So it's so important that you take care of your own cybersecurity, but as you hire third parties, you ask them, what are they doing to protect you and your information?
And you might want to put in your agreement that
your agreements, you have to, yes.
Hijacking of your computers, including the cost of repairing the same.
You could also ask for an annual report. There's a SOX report, a compliance report, and ask them to prove that they are doing their due diligence to protect your information.
Now, do law firms or others have to worry that cyber monsters are already lurking in their firm? And what can they do to find out?
Yeah, so there is one type of cyber monster that actually lives inside your organization or your law firm. And it could be an employee that is not happy. It could be an employee that maybe is so distracted. It's not always on purpose. But when that person is exposed in your organization, that's one of the biggest, it's 34% of the cyber attacks happen with that type of cyber monster.
And your cybersecurity is only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah.
So the least secure person, the person with the least amount of security, that's the level of security. Even if it's very robust, other people in other departments that's going to be the weak link. That's what's going to get you in trouble. Or your vendor, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And I will say, if I revert that thought, which it's very, very common, and I love that one. I love to say people could be the strongest link in your organization if they know how to protect your information. So,
and I guess it's everyone's job to protect your information.
Absolutely. And it's at home, it's at your office, in anything. Technology is everywhere.
Is it a good idea to give your workers a cybersecurity checkup to check how robust they are do sometimes people hire an investigator to try to scan someone's computer just to check out the security?
Yes. So there is a practice. It's a pen test. It's a penetration test. So you can hire someone to try to hack you so they can tell you where are your weaknesses and how. Yeah, absolutely. Very
common. Do you recommend that?
I do. We have done it many times in the organizations I work for. It's always an eye-opener to know how where faults are in your organization and how to close them. So it's a great way to do it.
Okay, and it's for prevention. It shows you the weak links.
It shows you, yes, where the holes are, and then you can repair them.
Right. In general, are employees sharing too much information on social media?
Yeah, that's, someone mentioning this project, or we just signed this client, or we just did that, can jeopardize definitely your firm. So always have a clear policy what can be shared in social media if you have a social media presence, and make sure that everyone in your company knows how to act on that policy.
And it may violate laws if it's about stock, if it can affect the stock market price. There are different laws regarding insider information.
Yep.
And also, what a law firm is doing is confidential. So you really want to emphasize that to employees at every level.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes we share a good day.
What are some other unusual ways to practice cyber safety that only take a few minutes?
Yes. So what I was mentioning before, just taking 2-3 seconds, breathe, is one of the best techniques I have for any time you interact with technology. Just give yourself that few seconds to react before you post in social media, before you send that email, before you open that email. That's going to take way long term. And the second thing is create a calendar in the same way that your meetings are very important. Create cybersecurity tasks or cybersecurity action. Put it in your calendar once a week. Check your computer, update it. Check your phone, update it, and do that and make sure that your employees see cybersecurity as something that can be fun and make an activity together to who finds more phishing emails and make a competition within your firm to do that.
And if you come across a suspicious email, if you're not sure, don't open it. Maybe consult your cyber department.
Absolutely.
And I just want to remind our listeners that we are talking with Sandra Estok, and she's discussing cybersecurity for law firms and others. And she mentioned her book earlier. And her website, her book is Happily Ever Cyber, CYBER, and on her website you can find out more information and free information from her book. What should you do if someone is impersonating you online and possibly scamming your clients or friends?
Excellent, great question, Kenny, because that happened to me. Someone, have impersonated me in the past, and the first thing you should do is collect your evidence. So make sure that everything that impersonator is doing on your behalf, you have the proof. You gotta report that person. If it's social media or the authorities, you need to go to, IC3.gov is the FBI. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that you involve your local police and you have your report. You freeze your credit. And you make sure that you also put alerts on your accounts so that impersonator You want to eradicate that impersonator from your life. So notify your friends. I mean, the more you can do to proactively take that person off your life, the better chances you have to recover.
And what if you go a step further and find someone is impersonating you? Anything else you should do?
Yeah. So if it's impersonating you in social media, for example, the first thing that you need to do is change your passwords and recover your account. Report that person through the social media. Each social media platform has a different way to report if someone is impersonating you. So follow that process. And one simple thing that you all can do, either for your law firm or yourself, is create Google alerts. If someone is using your name, you get an email or you get a notification if there is something posted online about you or your firm.
So you should. Oh, so this way you'll see when someone's using your name or your likeness.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned some don'ts for sharing information online. Do you have any other suggestions for information that you should and should not share online?
Absolutely. One that we don't share passwords, your address, details like that. But sometimes things that are less obvious, like if you use the name of your pet as your security questions, like don't share that kind of information or change all your security questions, because those are super easy for hackers to find out about you. And if you use them as your bank account questions, now they could easily have access. So that will be one kind of information that is probably best not to share. Or if you want to share it, make sure that it's nothing related to your security.
And what about wire transfer scams?
Yeah, very, very common. So never, taking a practice, I guess, to never wire anything or transfer anything that you cannot validate verbally with someone, because anyone can impersonate anyone.
And it's certainly best to validate what's going on and what it's for, etc.
Yes. Are you really sending me this email? And, there have been so many fraud and wire scams, especially in real estate, and people have lost completely. And
many times law firms have been victimized. So it's
absolutely.
Verification is very important. What the purpose is and where it's going to.
Yeah, and the lawyer is in the middle, and they think the lawyer is doing the transaction, and in fact, it's not.
What other tips do you have, and maybe you cover some of them in your book or on your website, but what other tips do you have for lawyers and others in protecting themselves from cyber bullies and cyber scammers?
When you think about your firm and you think about all your personal and your company information, knowing exactly what is that you care most about, it's going to be very important. And cybersecurity is so big and so broad and could feel overwhelming at times. So what I always suggest is start small, start with where the things that matter most to you need to be protected. And make sure that you have updates in place. Make sure that you put a calendar. Make sure that you take care of the basics. Like the same way you go to the dentist and you take care of your feet, your teeth, or as a lawyer, you take care of, your documents, in the same way, cybersecurity is part of that basic routine that we all need to follow, and it becomes personal. It becomes part of your daily routine and your daily activity. When we see it that way, it changes.
The time and difficulty in undoing some of the damage is going to be a lot greater than the cost of those preventive actions you mentioned.
Absolutely. Yes, I lived this for 6 years, and it's painful and very hard.
And what other proposals are there for data privacy and legislation?
Yeah. So in Europe is much further in that. They already have that GDPR. And I work a lot with Europe and some of the other privacy here. We're starting to see some changes, and individual states are doing their own privacy laws or their own privacy regulations. So California has one, Washington, and all these different states. I think at some point there will be probably a more federal approach to privacy. Right now, it's going to become harder and harder for law firms and for companies to comply with so many different laws that exist.
For law firms who do business around the world?
Yes, exactly. Because they have to comply differently in every state if they do state or international services.
So from what you've said, cybersecurity starts with everyone in the law firm. Everyone has the power to prevent a breach. Everyone has the power to prevent cyber crime. Everyone has the power to upgrade their passwords and security. And when in doubt, do not open and contact someone who has more familiarity with it to investigate or evaluate an uncertain situation.
Yes. And besides, excellent summary, Kenny. I love that. And I think about ways that you can incorporate cybersecurity in a way that your employees feel engaged, that there is something for them to also enjoy about cybersecurity. And I think when we think about that change and how can this help my employees and help my firm, it's going to be more accepted, and it becomes a much easier practice than if it's just do this, and it's more fear-based or too technical.
Well, it's like having a fire drill. It's for everyone's protection and safety.
Yes.
Okay, I would just like to thank our guest, Sandra Estok. And Sandra, just give us your website again where people can find out more about your services, your expertise, and your book.
Yes, go to happilyevercyber.com.
Okay, happily, ILY, ever cyber. I would like to thank Sandra Estok for being our guest on Law You Should Know and talking to us about cybersecurity, which is very important during COVID and will become more important in the future. If you missed any portion of the program or you'd like to tell someone else about it, just go to our podcast at nccradio.org. And of course, we have podcasts there on many other law and law-related topics and past programs of this show and other shows here on WHPC. And please join us next week at this same time for another program on Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC